Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Where in the World. This week we are in Romania. Of course, if you've been tuning in, you'll already know that. My virtual background is Maramureș in Romania. But tonight we're going to do something cool, something special. We're going to do a live walking tour through Bucharest, Romania, the capital city. And joining me is George. Welcome to the show, George.
Hello. Nice to have you all with us. Yes, hello.
And tell everyone, what's the approximate temperature there?
Yeah, it's so warm. It's excellent. It's 0 Celsius in the middle of March, but we are used to that. No problem. We had a snow last evening. The good thing is that it stopped, but it's quite cold. So 0 freezing. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's good. Well, I'm glad you're taking one for the Adventures of Sarah team, and you're out in the 0 degrees. And not myself, but we appreciate it.
Yeah, it's okay.
To let everyone know, George is going to be leading our October tour. So we have quite a few spots available on the October Romania tour, the 5th through the 16th of October. George is going to be leading that, and he tonight is going to take us walking around live, of course, Bucharest, talking about history, communist history, and some of the things that happened to Romania after the communists fell. And I will be taking questions. I'm going to be kind of scanning Facebook. So if you've got any questions or comments you want to get in, just type them up on Facebook, and I will make sure I get those into George, and he can answer those. So I'm giving the floor to you, buddy. It's all yours.
Okay. So like you mentioned, my name is George. So I'm a tour guide. I started this in 2014 after 10 years in a TV station in Bucharest. I didn't like it anymore there, so it was a little bit quite boring. So I said it's time for me to do something else. So from 2014, I'm guiding, and I think it was the best move I made in my life, so it's okay. And now I'm going to tell you a few things about where we are, what's all about Romania, like an introduction, some general info about our country. So obviously we are in Europe, and we are in the eastern part of Europe, and Romania is our country. I will tell you some facts, not like a history lesson with a bunch of information you'll never remember, but some aspects are important for you to understand better what we are doing here. So we'll go back in time. 2,000 years. 2,000 years, where is today Romania, there was a population called the Dacians. Not all over where is today Romania, but pretty much an important part of what we have today as Romania, we had back then. So these guys, they were called the Dacians. Dacia was their kingdom. So Dacia kingdom, they were called the Dacians. So these guys lived here around 2,000 years ago. And at some point in 100, the Roman Empire came and conquered them. It's a long story, but basically the whole idea was that the Roman Empire was at its peak back then, 2,000 years ago. And their borders, the Roman Empire borders, were very close to where is today Romania, especially southern part of Romania. At that moment, so our neighbors, let's say, were the Romans, and the Dacians, this population, our ancestors, they were across the Danube River. So basically, they saw across the river, they saw the Romans, what they had, because they had lots of, gold, and they were very, of course, rich. So our guys, the Dacians, made some, let's say, expeditions into the Romans' territories. And at some point, the Roman emperor decided that, it's too much. So they started a war against the Dacians. So after the first war, in 101, it was the first war. The Romans, of course, won the war, and they had like a deal with the Dacians to keep the situation under control. But this lasted only a few years, and another war started in 105, and in 106, the Roman Empire conquered Dacia for good. That was the moment when in Rome, we had Trajan. Trajan was the emperor of the Roman Empire. And our guy, you know, the ruler of the Dacian Empire, the Dacian kingdom, was a guy called Decebal. So Decebal, when he was defeated by the Romans, decided that he cannot take this big humiliation, because usually you know better when the Romans conquered a place and who was alive was humiliated. So our guy, you know, Decebal, the king of the Dacian kingdom, committed suicide. So that was the moment when the Dacian kingdom was conquered by the Romans. This let's say period with I will put also now a little bit on the, for you to see things around me. Okay, you saw my face enough. Okay, so from 106 for almost 200 years, the Romans conquered the Dacia, and they started this important process of Romanization of the territory. So they imposed the Latin language, and this is why Romania at the moment, in the last 2,000 years, but Romania today is the only country in this part of Europe with a Latin language. That's why it's so weird. I mean, so weird. So curious for many people, you know, they come here and they expect to hear or to listen to like a Slav language, like a Russian language. But we have a Latin language, the only country in this part of Europe. So the Romans, 2,000 years ago, they stayed here for almost 200 years, 175 years. Because of many invasions started to enter Europe, and Dacia, this territory where is today Romania, was a little bit far away from where is, you know, Rome. It was difficult to defend. And at that moment, the Romans left. So from, let's say, year 275, the Romans left. During many centuries after that, all kinds of invasions came where is today Romania. So our geographic position, if you look on a map, you'll see that we are between, we were between empires. Ottoman Empire, so the Turks. You had the Russian Empire, you had the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So all these empires, and we are like a battleground. So it was quite difficult for us. And especially another reason which made it difficult for us, especially against the Ottoman Empire, it was that they, we were Christians, and it was like the border of Christianity in this part of Europe. And of course, the Romans, the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, were trying to conquer and to, implement their faith and so on. So this happened many centuries, and we get closer to today, and we will lead on the 1800s. So 1800s, we are in the 1800s. At that moment, Romania was not like it is today. So today we have a big country. It's the seventh in Europe as the size, and we have three big provinces. We have, of course, everyone knows about Transylvania, and we have Moldova, our part of Moldova. I'll tell you about that later, and Wallachia, which is the southern part. So these three provinces were not together. They were independent for many, many, many centuries. Only in the last 103 years, from 1918, we have all these three provinces together: Transylvania, Moldova, and Wallachia together. So these provinces form today Romania. And we are jumping to 1800s, and we are getting closer to why we are in this part of Bucharest, which is called the Revolution Square. So from the 1800s, the Romanian politicians, decided that it's better for us to have a monarchy. At that moment, there are so many, discussions between the Romanian politicians. They didn't have a common decision on who to run the country. So they said, okay, it's better for us to invite a foreign, prince, a foreign king to come here to Romania and be our king. So this is how in 1866, a German prince, Carol of Hohenzollern family, came to Romania at the invitation of the Romanian politicians. And he became our first king, Carol the First. He was German, and we have here his statue. It's a little bit dark, but this guy is our first king, Carol the First. He was invited in Romania in 1866, and he became the first king of Romania. He ruled for 48 years. He is the ruler who ruled the most during his time. And across of this statue is the royal palace. So this is the royal palace of Romania. It was the center of power during monarchy times. So Romania had monarchy from 1866 till 1947. So basically around almost 80 years, we are a monarchy. This period, in my opinion, this period from 1866 till 1947 was the best part of Romania. Because Romania back then in the 1800s was a very, very rural country. No infrastructure, no nothing. It was zero. Carol I, especially him, when he came with the support of course, of the political parties, how Romania was organized back then, started to implement lots of projects, especially infrastructure projects, and many reforms. After him, I mean, during his time in 1877, we won the independence war against the Ottoman Empire. So at that moment, from 1877, we have our independence. So it was a huge moment for us. From 1881, Carol I became the king of Romania. So after 15 years, after he came to Romania, he was like a voivode, became king. So after him, we had another 3 kings. He couldn't have, I mean, he, with his wife, they had a daughter. She died when she was only 4, and they couldn't have any other kids. So at that moment, Carol invited Ferdinand, his nephew, to come to Romania. So when Carol I died, Ferdinand took the throne. So Ferdinand was our second king. His wife was Queen Mary of Romania. If you Google search Queen Mary of Romania, you'll find about her a fabulous life. She was the niece of Queen Victoria. And for us, I mean, we can say she was the king. I mean, she was a very strong woman, incredible, very wise, and she made possible for Romania to be what it is today. During King Ferdinand and Queen Mary, Romania became Great Kingdom of Romania. 1918. In 1918, 1st of December, the Romanians from Transylvania, which at that moment was part of Austrian-Hungarian Empire, decided that they want to be united with Moldova and Wallachia. At that moment in 1918, Moldova and Wallachia were together, forming like a smaller kingdom. In 1918, Transylvania said, we want to be part of Moldova and Wallachia and to form Great Kingdom of Romania. And this happened after the First World War. After the First World War, we got back Transylvania. Okay, for us is the biggest historical event in our country history. It's the most important thing. For the Hungarians, of course, is the most disastrous thing ever happened to them because they lost Transylvania. We joined the First World War in order, at the end, if our side wins the war, to take back Transylvania. So it was very interesting because Ferdinand, he was a German, and he decided, to fight for Romania against the Germans, also the Hungarians. And our goal was to get back Transylvania. So for him was a very tough decision to go against his own country, but he did that. Queen Mary convinced him to do that because, of course, he had a very difficult time to make that decision, but Queen Mary insisted. And after the war was finished, we got back Transylvania from Hungary. So this happened in 1918. After King Ferdinand, we had his son, Carol II. He was from all four kings. He was, let's say, the least good king. But, you know, during his time, many things happened in Romania. It was like a dictator. Anyway, the problem was with him. He
Hey,
got
George,
in love.
George, I wanted to ask. Hey, George,
Please,
can you
please.
hear me? I want to
Yes.
ask, can you tell us what's in the royal palace? Because I think you're right next to it. Yes, what's in the royal palace now?
Okay. Yes. Now, so okay, you see now the royal palace. So this was the center of the power during the monarchy time. Now we have an art gallery. So it's the art gallery, or like the art museum of Romania. So
Okay.
now it's only a museum. This was the place where King Michael, the last king we had, he died in December 2017. So almost 4 years ago. He was brought here, you know, his body was brought here, and it was like a national ceremony. Hundreds of thousands of people came here. So I will just mention a little bit of Carol II. So Carol II was Ferdinand's son. He ruled, but at some point he got in love with a lady and he left Romania. At that moment, King Michael, his son, he was only 5 years old. And King Michael became king of Romania when he was only 5 years old. After he, it was the youngest, let's say, ruler in Europe and maybe in the world at that age. Of course, he had, let's say, a commission of politicians and so on, but he was the king of Romania when he was only 5 years old. But his father came back at some point and he got back the throne again. After a few years, King Michael took the throne again when he was only 19. So we are getting closer to what to today. So King Michael became king again for the second time when he was 19 years old. For him was quite a bad moment because the Second World War started. At that moment, so again, he was only 19 years old. At that moment, Romania had the prime minister, a general, Ion Antonescu was his name. He was the prime minister and also a close ally, a close friend to Hitler. So Romania joined the Second World War in an alliance with Germany. We did that. Nobody imagined what happened after that, but our goal to join the Second World War with Germany against Russia was to take back Moldova, because today we have part of Moldova and part of Moldova is a foreign country, an independent state at the moment, because Russians took part of what is the big Moldova, half of it, they took it, and we said, okay, we're gonna go with Germany against Russia to take back Moldova. This was the decision Antonescu made, and it was okay. This was what we thought that it's right for us to take back what was ours from Russia. The problem was that Antonescu, you know, took Romanian soldiers against the Russians. They invaded Moldova. They, let's say, took it back, but we didn't stop there. So this was the biggest mistake Antonescu, you know, the general and the head of the army made. Because instead of stopping after we got what was ours, he continued with Hitler towards Moscow. So that was a disaster, because at some point, the, let's say, fate of the war turned, and we became in a very bad situation because Germany started to lose, you know, and Russia started to win. So we are in a very, very bad situation. So this, you know, made King Michael, along with the Romanian politicians from the democratic parties, because, you know, the Antonescu, the prime minister, was like a dictator. Sorry about that. We have like a car race here in Bucharest. Okay,
it's Fast and the Furious. Bucharest
yeah, I think so. That is the remake of, yeah. So what happened was that because Antonescu, this prime minister, started to have like a dictatorship, and he was a good friend with Hitler. Unfortunately, in 1941, we had some, let's say, one of the most horrible moments of our history. Many Jews were, let's say, killed and deported from Romania during those days. So in 1944, it was the time for us to switch sides, because otherwise, with Russia getting better and better and Germany losing the war, if we would have stayed in this alliance with Germany, we would become, leveled by the Russians when they were marching towards Germany. So in August 23rd, 1944, King Michael, along with democratic political parties, made a move against Antonescu. So they asked him to resign. So Antonescu was invited in this palace in 1944, in December 23rd, and asked to resign and for us to take Romania against Germany and with the Allies. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. At that moment, he was arrested. So in August 1944, the prime minister and the leader of the army was arrested. From that moment, that was the day when Romania switched sides. This was a shock for Hitler and, of course, the German army, because they lost Romania. Romania was very important for Germany, especially for our oil, because we had, and we still have, but we had oil. And this was a very important source for the German army. So from that moment, Romania started to go against Germany. And in a way, that, of course, that was the right decision to do, but it was not without costs, because when Russians came through Romania, they stayed. For us, it was quite a bad moment, because, usually we have a joke here saying that when Russians come here, they usually stay a lot. And this, and this is what happened. King Michael was, again, very young at that moment. And with Antonescu being arrested and Romania going with the Allies against Germany, this was an important decision, because shortened the war with few months. Some historians are saying that 6 months were saved of this war. From that moment, and now maybe it was a little bit long, but for you to get a better idea why we are here. So we have here on the left side, we have the royal palace where we had our kings. They were ruling Romania from this side. And if we move a little bit like this, we have this big building here. This became, from 1945, 46, 47, this became the communist headquarters. So it's very interesting that it's like they are parallel buildings. Mm-hmm. So one was here on the left side. This was the royal palace where monarchy and kings stayed. And we have here on the other side, the Communist Party headquarters. Unfortunately for us, from 1945 in March became the worst part of our history. The worst part of our history lasted almost 45 years, and it was called the communist times. And it was the moment when hundreds of thousands of Romanians, in a way or other, were killed or tortured or sent to labor camps. Many millions suffered in a way or another. In 1945, the Soviets, the troops, were here in Romania, and King Michael couldn't, continue to provide a democratic country, because the communists at that moment, they wanted to impose their own government. So they forced King Michael to accept a prime minister, a puppet, a Romanian puppet. He was a puppet in the hands of the Soviets. So from that moment, Romania got a communist prime minister. And from 1946, in November, they fraud the elections. they won with, let's say, officially 80%. Nobody voted for them because before that, 1 year ago, the Communist Party in Romania had less than 1,000 members. And in 46, what to know, they won the elections. So from that moment, from 1947, the communists took control. And of course, became the moment to remove the king from this palace. But King Michael, although he was very young, he didn't want to go. He was hoping to get some support from Great Britain, America. But unfortunately for us, the war was over. The war was, cost a lot. Although the Allies were with him and with us, the British and the Americans, they didn't intervene. So until very last moment, King Michael hoped that, this our allies, Americans and British will come and will, let's say, save us from the Russians. But this unfortunately is nobody's fault. This is history, this happened. King Michael didn't want to leave. He was cousin with Queen Elizabeth of Great Britain, and he was invited to Queen Elizabeth's wedding. And that was a moment when the communists, they thought, okay, maybe he will not come back. But King Michael, went to the wedding and he came back. Nobody believed that he would come back, but he came back. And this was the final moment for the communists. And in 30th of December, 1947, the prime minister, the communist prime minister, came to this palace and forced, with a gun, forced King Michael to abdicate. They blackmailed King Michael, saying that if you don't leave, we're gonna kill 1,000 students we already arrested in Bucharest. So King Michael was in a very tough situation because, to abdicate, some people will think that you are coward, but in the same time, if you continue to stay, many people will be killed. So from December 1947, King Michael was forced to leave. He went into exile. So I told you I'm 41, and I remember the history books, they were during communism, they were lying, saying that he left with a train full of gold. Of course, this was absolutely insane. He left with his mother, and they went to Switzerland to seek help there. And of course, for almost 45 years, they weren't, actually, no, it's 50 years, they weren't allowed to come back to Romania. So now we are from 47 officially under communism regime. Of course, they started to remove absolutely everything was good in Romania, to kill the elites, because this was their strategy, to impose the new, the new man, the new idea, the new society. For doing that, they arrested all the elites Romania had, politicians, priests, science people, the elites of Romania, scholars were arrested. And many of them were sent in labor camps or they were executed. Romania had hundreds of labor camps and political prisons. So they imposed socialism, which evolved into communism quite soon. And we are getting closer to this building, to the communist headquarters. The first communist leaders are not so important, although they made huge bad things for Romania, terrible things. But we go to Ceausescu. Many people knows more about him. So Ceausescu became leader of Romania in 1965. And he ruled Romania for 24 years from this building. Maybe some of you remember 1989. In 1989, from this building, Ceausescu held his last speech, exactly from that balcony, exactly in the center of the building. I'll go closer later on. So Ceausescu ruled Romania from 65. At the beginning, in the first years when he was younger, he made, let's say, a good impression. Because in 68, he made a fantastic, and very brave, let's say, move when he said we will not take part of the Soviet invasion into Czechoslovakia back then. And it was incredible for a communist leader from the Eastern Bloc to say we will not take part with Russia from, against Czechoslovakia. In that moment, just a little bit, because I need to fix something. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. I change a little bit the the perspective. So Ceausescu made a good impression because he said will not take part of this invasion of the Russians against the Czechoslovakia. At that moment, he was received by Nixon in USA, by Queen Elizabeth. All these Western leaders thought that maybe we have a chance with this new guy, from Romania, to maybe make to have a chance against the Soviet Union. But unfortunately for us, Ceausescu got a little bit insane during his years in office. And he made a visit in the 70s in China and North Korea. From that moment, he, let's say, saw the society from China and North Korea. He liked it a lot. And we had a tragic event in 1977 in Romania. We had a big earthquake, which gave Ceausescu the, let's say, the reason to make lots of changes. So Ceausescu was impressed with China and North Korea. He came back and he said, okay, I want to implement the Fenian Pionian style into Romania. From that moment, so now we have this, this is, older parts of Bucharest, which are far more nicer. And unfortunately for us, we have lots of places in Bucharest with gray, apartment buildings, neighborhoods, Soviet style. But this lasted for 25 years with Ceausescu. And during, especially when he got older, he became paranoid. And of course, late 80s, the communism was almost over. Ceausescu, the situation in Romania was absolutely terrible. So I'm 41 and I remember everything, how it was. So I am born in 79 till 89. So I was 10 when we had this anti-communist revolution. So I will just give you some examples of how the situation was in Romania. Only few hours per day electricity, many days without hot water, warm water. Everything was rationed, especially the late 80s were a disaster. Because, Ceausescu in his megalomany wanted, and his ego was huge, wanted to pay all Romania debts in few years. And when you do that, of course, the price for doing that is enormous. Everything Romania produced went to export. For Ceausescu, to have money to pay the international debts Romania had. In the same time, this made us, after Albania, the poorest country in Europe, because everything Romania produced went to export. I'll just give you an example. We have very good farming in Romania, meat and everything. From a simple chicken, yes, from a simple chicken, I remember we only, if we are lucky, received only the neck, only the small wings, and for instance, from pork, from the pig, from the animal, we received only the nose, the tail, and the lower legs. And this was if we are lucky, because many times I remember my parents sent me, to the, let's say, market, and we were waiting there for hours, hoping that a car with something will come. And people in Romania usually started long lines, queue, just in case. I mean, they didn't know that something will be delivered that day, but they stayed there for hours from, 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And most of the times, no truck came with no food. So this was, you have to imagine, this was like a black and white movie. No colors, no nothing. It was very depressing. I mean, cannot be compared with how it is today. The situation today in Romania is far, far better than it was, during communist times. Okay, the situation in Romania now should be maybe 2 times better than it is today, but this is what it is. And anyway, it's far better than it was 30 years or 40, 50 years ago. I remember I was doing my homeworks with gloves in my hands. I mean, now it's 0 degrees outside. During communism, this was maybe, let's say, 7, 8 degrees in the apartment. I was sleeping with a hat on my head, for instance. So because I was doing when I was a kid, I was in the 1st and 2nd grade, we had that special class at school where they teach you to write in a beautiful manner. I don't know in English the name. So it was important, to feel the pencil. But if you are wearing gloves, you cannot do that. So my writing was not very, beautiful. And the teacher gave me bad marks. And I was so frustrated because, come on, I'm doing the homework with my gloves in my hand. How can I write beautiful? I cannot do that. So also wait a little bit. Another thing was that my personal problem with the communists when I was a kid was the fact that we had only 2 hours TV program per day from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. And the part of the weather and 2 minutes of cartoons, everything was about communism. Everything. How great communism is, how great Ceausescu is, everything was about that. And my biggest frustration was the fact that we received only 2 minutes of cartoons. And I'll just give you a funny example. Maybe you know the aristocrat cats. So this was my favorite when I was a kid. So the show, I mean, the movie, the cartoon movie is maybe 50 minutes, 1 hour. But because they split the whole movie in so many episodes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, and they gave us the aristocrat cats was only Saturday and Sunday. They gave us this for 1 year. At the end, I forgot how it started. Because 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes on a year, I forgot how it started, and it was insane. So this was my problem. And I remember, so I was 7, 8 years old. I started to write, let's say, silly poems against, Ceausescu and especially his wife. And I was so happy that, wow, what a good poem I wrote. And I showed this to my father, and he said, you never do this again. You go to school tomorrow and you don't tell this to anybody because you didn't know who your neighbors are. Because during communism, the communists, they had this Securitate. This was the secret service, the secret political service. So they were after you. They made huge bad, they tortured people, they arrested people, and you didn't know exactly who you are talking with. So that's why everyone was afraid to make a silly joke, to make fun of the president and so on. So the frustration in the society accumulated. And in, let's say, the late 80s, communism came to an end. Ceausescu didn't understand this. And Gorbachev came to Romania, I think in 87. And I think in the backstage, he told Ceausescu, it's over. Step back and you'll have nothing to worry about. But Ceausescu at that moment was a little bit, let's say, paranoid, megalomaniac, with mental problems. And he didn't understand that. And he continued. All the communist countries, the regimes from these communist countries collapsed, and we were the last country to still have communism. I remember I was listening to Free Europe radio station and Voice of America. They were broadcasting in Romania in the Romanian language. And we learned about what happened in Bulgaria, in Poland, in Czechoslovakia, everywhere. And we were the last country to still have communism. I'll move a little bit the camera to switch my hand because it's a little bit cold. Okay, so I'll walk a little bit. And so and we are asking what's wrong with us. I mean, we are the last country to still have communism. But December 1989 came, and we have a city in the western part of Romania called Timisoara. That was the place where the revolution started. At the beginning, only few people. Basically, the revolution was triggered by a Hungarian priest. He was house arrest, and people went to his, house to support him. More people came, and at some point they started to yell against Ceausescu. Next day, hundreds, and after that, thousands of people came. Ceausescu understood that he has a problem, and he sent the army to Timisoara. And from 17th of December 1989, Timisoara became, let's say, a massacre place in Romania. Many people were killed in Timisoara because they were against Ceausescu, but basically because they wanted freedom, they wanted democracy, they wanted, a normal life. We couldn't bear the life we had. It was a miserable, miserable life. So Timisoara was like a giant at that moment in December, like a giant, let's say, how to say, everyone wanted to get rid of communism. They couldn't bear anymore. Ceausescu sent the army, killed many, many, many people. But next day after, this was 17th of December, from 18th of December, more people went on the streets. And Timisoara became the first city free of communism because the army withdrew because it was too much. Too many people were on the streets. So we are listening this, but in Bucharest, everything was quiet. Nothing happened. Bucharest was, on mute. But Ceausescu made a huge, huge, huge mistake. He was advised, and this is interesting. He was advised to have a big rally. To have a big rally to say that situation is under control, communism is great, the imperialists are bad, and so on. So his fatal mistake was to gather here in this square I was walking around, to call here, let's say 100,000 people, workers. Everyone hated him, but they were forced to attend this rally. And he held the rally from this building. So December 21st. On December 21st, from this building, which was the Communist Party headquarters, from this building, Ceausescu held his last speech. Basically, he started to say, communism is great. In Timisoara, the imperialists, the secret services, CIA, all the other intelligence communities are trying, to dismember Romania and so on and so on. At some point, so this whole square was packed with people, they were forced to come here. And at some point, during Ceausescu's speech, some noises, some explosions started to be heard in the square. At that moment, people panicked and started to yell against Ceausescu. Ceausescu from this balcony was in total panic at that moment. From that moment, he became, the most weak person. Before that, he was, let's say, the god of Romania. Nobody had any courage to say something against him. But from that moment, Ceausescu became total panic. It was incredible. Let's say a little bit. Okay, do you hear me?
Yep, that's better now. I think it's just the earpiece thing.
Maybe. Okay. So from that moment, Ceausescu lost control. People here in the square started to go against him. Ceausescu was in total panic. I was watching this live on television, and I thought that is the moment. From that moment, 21st of December, people, even in Bucharest, thought that, okay, we have a chance to get rid of communism. This happened around noon on 21st of December. People went on the other streets around this big square and started to protest. They formed a barricade. And when night came, Ceausescu sent his loyals, the army, the troops, and started a massacre in Bucharest. I remember my house is maybe 10 kilometers from here. And, you could hear the shootings. It was like a war. I remember that perfectly. My brother, he is 10 years older than me, and he was with his friends at these protests, you know, against Ceausescu. And I remember my parents. My parents were in total panic. Where is my brother? Where is my brother? He managed to survive, and he managed to come back around 4 in the morning. He was full of mud. You know, one of his friends didn't make it, and one of his friends was shot. He was one of the first shot in Bucharest. This was 21st of December. It was a massacre. Second day, 22nd of December, Ceausescu was still in this building, and he tried. People gathered in this square against him. The square was full again. He tried to speak again to the people. Nobody wanted that, and at that moment, people started to force the entrance into the building. At that moment, Ceausescu went inside, called his helicopter, and he flew with a helicopter from this building. From that moment, 22nd of December, noon, it was the moment when the anti-communist revolution was a success. Everything was broadcasted live on television. It's very interesting. Before that day, television was 100% with Ceausescu. From the second day, television was 100% against Ceausescu. They switched sides immediately. And from that moment, people started to celebrate the victory. You would think that that was, wow, excellent, great. That was it. People were very naive, thinking that, okay, we have our victory and this nightmare is over. But at that moment, in the 22nd of December, a guy from the second or third third level of the Communist Party came into this square with more of his friends, all former communists, or actually communists, but from the second or third level. They entered the building, they sent people out. They said basically, we are politicians, we know better, you don't know anything about politics, and they took power. At that moment, the naive people who really made the revolution were sent off the building, and these new guys, former communists, actually communists from the third level, entered, and then they took power. Okay, no problem with that, but something was wrong, because the new guy who took power, Iliescu was his name, he needed a good reason to say that we need to take power, because the situation is chaos. At that moment, Ceausescu was captured. Ceausescu with his wife, they were captured, arrested. So from that moment, no reason, to have people being killed or something like that, because the big dictator was captured. But the new guy needed a good reason to say we need to take power. At that moment, the new guy Iliescu went into the same balcony and addressed to the people from this square, and he started to say, "Dear comrades." So this was the communist type of speaking, "Dear comrades." And that moment, people from this square said, "What we are doing? I mean, we got rid of Ceausescu and we have another thing. We're gonna continue communism." From only that moment, people from the square started to yell against communism, because before that, it was very personalized against Ceausescu as a person. He was the evil, of course. But from that moment, people started, we don't want communism anymore. And the new guy wanted to have communism, but with a human face, a little bit of makeup, to continue communism. This was anyway Gorbachev's idea, to make a more, a nicer, let's say, a more human face communism. So this new guy at that moment thought that, okay, I'm going to lose the square, I'm going to lose the people. Went back, and what a coincidence. After 1 hour, it was a massacre again in this square. Suddenly, on television, something was invented. We are attacked by terrorists, Syrian terrorists. Romania is under attack by terrorists. 31 years after, not a single terrorist was captured. Not a single terrorist was even, mentioned somewhere. So this was a big masquerade, because the new guy needed a reason to say we need to take control because it's chaos.
So they provoked this chaos. What I'm telling you now is not officially, of course, but everyone knows that. This new guy I'm telling you about who took power, he's, I think, 90 something years old, and he's on trial for crimes against humanity for what he did in 1989 and in 1990. So from that moment, a massacre started in Bucharest, and more than 1,000 people were killed only because the new guys they needed a reason to say we need to take control because, you know, the situation is chaotic. So for a few days, from December 26th to December 25th, it was a massacre. Ceausescu, the former dictator, was captured. The new guys made a fake trial and they executed Ceausescu. Okay, Ceausescu was guilty of many things. Totally agree. I hated him. But, you know, he was killed very soon. I mean, in only a few days without a proper trial because he knew too much about the new guys. That was the problem. Not because he was guilty. He was guilty of all the things we endured, but he was killed because he knew too much about the new guys. So they executed Ceausescu on the Christmas day, which was incredible, which was terrible because we are a Christian country, yes? And to kill someone, you know, the head of state, no matter how bad it is, on the Christmas day, this is incredible, you know, bad signal. Of course, people celebrated that because, you know, we are so much, we had this frustration accumulated during so many years. But, so they killed him. And from 25th of December, everything calmed down. The new guy with his friends, of course, from the Communist Party, you know, former KGB controlled generals. Okay, it's unofficially, it's not officially recognized yet. It will be, but this was what it was. And here, this monument shows you the names of the people who were killed in Bucharest. So we have here the names. There are so many names. And all these names are names of people who were killed in exactly this square. And, you know, unfortunately, most of them died after Ceausescu was captured. So makes no sense. Okay, maybe it makes sense to say, okay, before Ceausescu was captured, of course, he wanted to continue his power and he killed them. Okay, but we are talking about only, let's say, 200 people. After Ceausescu was captured, the vast majority of victims were killed after Ceausescu was captured, and it was no reason, you know, to kill more people. But because these new guys wanted to have a good reason to say we have to take power, this is what happened. And all this in total is 1,150 people, I think. They were killed during those days. I remember I was here with my father. I wanted to go with him on 22nd of December when, you know, the revolution started, but he didn't take me with him. He was wise, yeah, not to listen to a stupid kid. But he was here with my brother. He was 20, I was only 10. And for a few days, Bucharest was like a massacre. I remember he took me here 26th of December, and you could still see blood on these streets. And I have bullets, you know, at my home, you know, I collected back then. So this is what happened here in Bucharest in December 1989. Okay, we celebrated, we were free again after, I don't know, 50 years. We were free again. And we thought that, okay, this is a new start. We're gonna be great. But unfortunately for us, and now we are getting closer to our days, the new guy I told you took control, Iliescu, with his friends. They started, let's say, the Socialist Party. Basically, it was and still is the continuator of the Communist Party. And for the first 6 years, when Romania was officially a democracy, he ruled Romania. Okay, he won the elections, but of course, back then it was only TV station, only one radio station, and of course they controlled this. And for the first 6 years, he ruled Romania, and Romania stands still. No reforms, no, you know, the country was still very much closed for foreign investors and so on. So we were extremely poor for the first 6 years. In the first year, in 1990, people understood, you know, the first part of his period was okay. He's a new guy. Maybe we'll have a better life with him. But people understood, especially in Bucharest, people understood immediately what happened and started to go against him and against his communist friends. And in 1990 in Bucharest, we had a protest for 3 months against the new power, which was on paper officially was a democratic power, but in reality were former communists. They wanted to continue this. So they did what usually communists do. Basically, they stopped the protest with violence, and people were killed in June 1990 when Romania was a democratic country. Were killed because this protest, the new guy Ion Iliescu didn't like this protest, and he called his loyals miners from a mining area in Romania. And in June 1990, the whole Europe, the whole world was shocked with what is happening in Romania, because Romania had a fantastic image back then with what we achieved. We were the only country with many people to be killed to get rid of communism, and suddenly something similar is happening. And from that moment, many people from Romania left Romania. They went in other countries because they couldn't continue, to what we are doing. I mean, we are a democracy and we are doing the same thing. This new guy, for 6 years controlled Romania, and we can say only from 1996, people elected a new president, a more, let's say, democratic part of the political spectrum. So we got better from, let's say, 96. Only for a few seconds, I will go into my car, and maybe Andrew can take some questions, and I will put my phone in order for you to be able to see something, because I want to drive a little bit to the Parliament building, which is the second largest building on the planet, and maybe you. Okay, let's see a little bit. Okay.
So, and hey, I'll ask, because I don't know, George, when I know that Ceausescu was obviously ousted in '89. When was this huge building built?
Yes.
Or when was it finished? I guess. I mean, obviously it took a while, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the building we are now going to. Now today it's called the Palace of the Parliament, was built from the 80s. In basically the official inauguration of the workings were in '84 and lasted for 10 years to complete the whole building. Ceausescu, I told you, was megalomaniac, yes, and he wanted to have the biggest building, the biggest palace on the planet. And that's why now, okay, it's the second after Pentagon, but Pentagon is a military, facility, but Ceausescu wanted to have his palace to be the biggest one. And from the 80s, Ceausescu started to implement what he saw in North Korea and in China. So from, let's say, imagine that he removed an entire neighborhood only to build this palace. So 50,000 people were forced to move from their houses because their houses were demolished in order to make room for this building. So suddenly, I mean, you are living today, and they will tell you, okay, in 1 week you have to go because we want to build this. So yeah, in '84 they started. Ceausescu was killed in '89, so he didn't have the chance to see it finished. And it's immense. We will drive a little bit around, and it's absolutely incredible big. It's let's say it's the second or third as size as the volume on the planet. There are some pyramids in Mexico, yeah, and of course Pentagon is the biggest one. For you to get an idea, you'll see. So from a level from the ground up to the top is, let's say in feet should be around 270 feet. But it's interesting, below, under the ground is bigger, because Ceausescu, I told you, was paranoid, and he thought that a nuclear attack was to come against him, and he built all kinds of, tunnels, escape rooms, and so on. So actually, the building is bigger under the ground. So it's incredible. And
Wow.
we had a problem in. So they started in '84. In '89, we had this revolution. The building wasn't completed, and we thought what to do with it, because cost almost $4 billion. We spent lots of money with it, and what to do with it. And the decision was, okay, let's continue and finish. And they did that, and now is the parliament, where, but with 1,000 rooms. And when I tell you a room, it's not like your apartment or your house room. The rooms, I mean, huge rooms, 1,000 rooms. I mean, not even today is completed, and not even today it's fully in use. They put their parliament, the constitutional court, all kinds of institutions, but it's not full in full use.
Well, I think what I find kind of comical is that you guys are like Ceausescu went for the one big like defensive nugget, like, hey, if there's going to be an attack, it's going to be this awesome bunker.
Yeah.
And then like Albania went the other way. They're like, we're just going to build like a million little bunkers everywhere in case someone wants to invade us or whatever. And then it was like, well, no one ended up invading. So either strategy didn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. Ceausescu lost control. I mean, mentally he was sick. I mean, really, he had a problem. He was, sick. And for instance, when he started to build it, he asked, the engineers and the people, where is the safest place in Bucharest? Because I told you, Bucharest is in an area which is, quite exposed earthquakes. Yes. Yep. And the specialist told him in this part of Bucharest is the safest. That the ground is the best. And but the problem was that on this part of Bucharest, we are going there in 2-3 minutes, was a hill, and he said, okay, remove that hill, basically. So he leveled the whole. I mean, okay, he demolished all the neighborhood, and he leveled that hill in order for the building to be built. So basically, they build a building, and in front of the building, in front of the palace, he built, let's say, he called this Socialism Victory Boulevard. So this boulevard, Ceausescu wanted to be the longest and the widest boulevard on the planet. And for sure, he wanted to be wider than Champs-Élysées in Paris. This, with dictators, they don't care about how beautiful it is. They just want to be big. That was it. So I will take the camera now and film. Okay, nice. So this is one side of it, and we will drive around.
Oh yeah, now you can see the, wow, yeah, that's pretty immense.
So during the times when this was built, of course, many churches were in this neighborhood, and many churches were demolished too. In total, 20 churches were demolished and 11 were removed, not only to make room for this palace, but in general in Bucharest, many churches were demolished. So now we are still going around. Very interesting is that today, the Orthodox Church of Romania is building the new cathedral, and they choose the place for the new cathedral to be built exactly in the courtyard of this former communist, palace, Ceausescu's palace. So I think Ceausescu now is drilling, because he was an atheist, he hated the church, God, and now they are building the Orthodox cathedral exactly in his courtyard. This is very funny. And of course, the new Orthodox cathedral is huge, of course. In a way, it's good to make a balance, because this building is huge. I don't know if you will be able to see part of the cathedral is being built.
Is the cathedral finished, or is it still being built?
Maybe 2 years. They started, I think, around 5 years ago. It's still under construction. It is huge. and it's in a part it's taller than this parliament building today. But anyway, Ceausescu, I think he's, oh, I don't know where exactly he is now, but he has nightmares seeing that the big church is built in his on his grounds. Yeah, so we will drive now in 5 minutes. We'll be in front of the building, in front of the Palace of the Parliament.
So
And,
I want to ask
yeah.
something that gets brought up a lot. One of the when people would ask, hey, is Bucharest like a safe city, or they hear all these things, and obviously I've seen how it's improved over time, and Sarah and I were talking that, you know, we both feel safe there. But one of the things I always remember from all the travel books from the late 90s were like, oh, beware of the wild packs of dogs. And I kind of remember reading that that the reason you had all these wild dogs was when you moved 50,000 people, they didn't have any room for the animals, or the animals were just left as strays, and that's how you got all these, like, this reputation for the stray dog capital of Europe.
Yeah, so absolutely, we had these stray dogs was one of the worst problems Bucharest used to have. Not anymore. You don't see a single dog on the street these days. But in the past, I mean, until let's say 10, 12 years ago, we had, at some point, they counted 250,000 stray dogs on the streets. And for instance, a Japanese tourist was, killed. He died because he had an encounter with a stray dog. But this problem is not anymore. And generally speaking, Romania and Bucharest are one of the safest countries, and Bucharest safest capitals in Europe. I don't say that because I'm a Romanian, but this is absolutely, a valid information. It's safe. And Bucharest, I mean, nobody has, of course, every capital has its bad neighborhoods and stuff like that, but you don't have that, always to look around you. Oh my God, maybe a terrorist attack will happen. Maybe that truck will detonate. Maybe, we don't have that. Fortunately for us, we never had a terrorist attack. We never had, explosions or, this mafia killers or something like that. No, Romania is quite safe, and Bucharest is really safe. No problem with dogs. In the last maybe 10 years, actually, this interesting. This stray dogs problem stopped because of a tragedy. One kid, 4 years old, he was with his mother, I think, in a park, and he was attacked by a big, many dogs, and he was killed. He was actually eaten by part of it by these dogs, and this created a huge reaction in the society, and people reacted, and the mayor from that time had to take measures, and from that moment, maybe 10, 12 years ago, we don't have a problem with stray dogs, and the matter was solved in only few months. I think maybe 6 months. We didn't have a problem anymore. So I arrived in the Constitutional Square, and I will film a little bit this. Excuse me a little. Yeah. So this is okay. So this is the Palace of the Parliament, and this is the front. So from here, from where I am to the top, is 90 meters, so 270 feet, and below underground is more than that. It's insane. And so basically, it's this building, the Palace of the Parliament, second largest building on the planet. And Ceausescu, he, was, let's say, he imagined himself having all kinds of, addresses to the nation from the balcony, and he wanted to have this huge North Korean style square, full with people, and in front of the Parliament, it was this Socialism Victory Boulevard, which I told you he wanted to be longer and wider than Champs-Élysées. And people were people were making fun, saying that socialism victory against us, because they almost killed us. And this was a joke during the 80s. Socialism victory against the Romanian people. They had this joke, which yeah. And okay, we'll drive a little bit on the boulevard, and if you have more questions or something like that, luckily for us, so I will get a little bit on today's situation. So we are part of the European Union since 2007, and we for sure are seeing the benefits of that. I mean, Romania is a full democratic country now. We have strong institutions. We are part of NATO from 2004. We have a strategic partnership with USA. There are American bases in Romania. USA is our strongest ally. So we have a very good cooperation. We send people to all kinds of battlegrounds like Iraq, Afghanistan. Actually, unfortunately, we lost many soldiers in those in those countries. So we are fully, let's say, interacted with European Union and NATO and stuff like that. The economy is like, yeah.
I was going to ask for people visiting the Palace of Culture, can you go and see anything underground? Is any of that open to visitors?
Yes, but it's not so interesting. Wait a little bit. Okay, do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So yes, you can go underground, but there are they will show you only a few empty rooms. It's not spectacular. Anyway,
okay.
As a guide, I don't advise people necessarily to visit this building. In my opinion, at least, it's enough to go in front of it, listen the story, learn about the facts and everything, and carry on. What is interesting to see and to visit in Bucharest is Ceausescu's former residence. That is more interesting because you're gonna see the original furniture, his bed, and you'll understand more about his mind, how sick he was. He was very this notion of being with bad taste, kitsch. So you'll get a better idea about him visiting his residence. That is worth a visit. This building, in my opinion at least, is not so interesting inside. Anyway, the tour, they have tours, they have tour guides inside. The tour is like 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. Basically, you see only big rooms. It's so and so. I would not go.
Well, I mean, I know some of the places that people will see on our Romania tour, and like Peleș Castle is so fantastic.
Yeah,
after that, I'm not sure anything else is going to be interesting.
Yes, for sure. I always advise Peleș and other places. Yes, and this one is an administrative building. Impresses you with the size and especially the stories. Now, I didn't have time. I didn't want to make it too long, but when you are, of course, and now it's virtual. So that's why I prefer normality. This is not the new normality. I don't like the new normality. So I'm not going to go, I'm not going to get used with this new normality. So I prefer face-to-face tours. And because, to hear the story when you have someone with you, I mean, a real person is far better.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, we need to wrap this up.
Okay.
So I wanna thank you so much for doing this. This is your this is your first virtual tour and mine as well. So kind suggestions and comments, always welcome. As
Absolutely.
well as some as some likes and some nice comments as well. But for those of you listening, as I said before, George is going to be leading the October tour, which we still have spots for. The September tour right now is fully booked. Tomorrow, tune in because Sarah and I are going to do a PowerPoint presentation on kind of everything we see on the tour, and we're going to have some very nice photos that George has given us. So he might even want to check in and see how amazing the tour is. We're going to be in 1, 2, 4 different regions, probably 10 different towns and cities and all sorts of villages and others, and castles and things like that. So it'll be a really in-depth thing. We even have some video to show people of some of the places as well. So everyone can tune in. That's going to be 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Friday. So George, thank you so much, and looking forward to meet in person later this year.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And again, I will prefer to have a real person, real guests. It's far better than having these virtual tours, which are good for the time now. But I'm very optimistic about this season, and I really think that Romania, for instance, will not be closed. We're not going to have a lockdown or something like that. Our perspective and our approach was all this year to stay open as much as possible, to have a normal life as much as possible.
Yep. Well, I share your sentiments, and I will probably discuss more of that tomorrow when I run through the tour about how things are shaping up there. Of course, if you're booked on a tour, or if you're interested in the October tour, just send me an email, and I could have a conversation with you with all the guests personally about what's going on and what I think's going to be happening with our tours there. So, good night, sir. Thanks so much. Thank you for watching, everyone. Ciao.
Thank you. God bless. Bye.